from Courtside the Virtual Hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, episode number 408. Happy New Year, basketball gamers. Andrew with you once again, joined by Derek, a.k.a. D for 3.
Oh, Happy New Year. Now, happy to be here again. The first ever NLSC basketball gaming tournament has completed. We just finished it up, and it was, playing NBA Live 10 with the community. We had 8 different participants in the tournament, and I'd like to say that it was wildly successful.
For what was supposed to be a test run, it was, I think, extremely successful. It could barely even call it a test run as far as how smoothly it went, quite frankly. It's a legit tournament, I thought, and, hats off to you. You did win the tournament. Hats off also to Kidz 4872, putting up a fight there in the finals, and also obviously getting to the finals in the first place. Thanks to everybody who participated. It was a great tournament. I said this in the post in the forum, I just loved that everyone seemed to have fun and enjoyed the highlights, and a lot of goodwill, a lot of sportsmanship with the tournament. Great
sportsmanship, a lot of intense moments, which is great in the tournament, a lot of back and forths as far as, truly competing and trying to get the best of one another and everything. But yeah, no sore sportsmanship, just great, fun basketball video game action. And, the other participants, we had B-Train, who you faced off against in the first round. We had B-Train, Sluggy Sports. We had Q, who's also a team member on the forums. We had Kidz 4872. We had Ermoli, and Manny Live. And just all great sports, great action. I was lucky enough to have a front row seat to most of the action. As not only was I making the videos and snipping up the videos and making the highlights and whatnot, but I hosted for a lot of the games, for most of the tournament. So people could have a really good connection and be on a level playing field, etc. So, I thought it was great, and I can't wait for the next tournament. We're either going to do it on NBA Jam 2010 for PlayStation 3 or NBA Jam on Fire Edition. So we'll see.
No, just a great time all around, I think. And we've gushed about Parsec so often, and throughout the past year we've just had so much fun with Parsec, more and more people getting on there, really seeing what we can do with it. This tournament just being such a great example, because these games, some of them had online capabilities, obviously, back in the day, but we were limited to what the games provided for us. We couldn't necessarily do tournaments this way, or it was tougher to do. Recording the footage, obviously, not as easy as it is now to do. And yeah, some games that never had online capabilities, or the online capabilities are long since discontinued, no longer a problem. So we're going to have some great fun with the tournaments this year. As you said, a jam game is going to be up next. That's thanks to me putting my hand on the scale. And also looking to do, as we've said before as well, a college game for March Madness this year.
It's going to be super exciting. I do want to say, too, that I really had fun playing in the NBA Live 10 tournament. I had a great first-round series with Ermoli, who was an excellent sport. He used the Timberwolves, so he was kind of at a disadvantage to begin with, because they're not strong in that game, and he can't hit threes with Kevin Love either, so he couldn't really spread the floor the way he wanted to, and he had to rely way too much on Johnny Flynn, etc. And, I got to play against you in the second round, and despite some technical difficulties on your end using the emulator, I still thought that it was a really fun series between us. I thought the games were competitive, and there was some really good back and forths. And then Kidz 4872, even though it ended up being a sweep in the finals, he was up by 21 in game 1, 40-19 at one point, and I had to really put it together to try to come back, and I actually ended up winning that one. But he was a great opponent. I won another game by 4, I think another game by 6, something like that, and he was super competitive in that series. He's very, very good at NBA Live 10, so I just thought it was excellent. I do want to play NCAA Basketball 09 for the March Madness tournament and use the classic teams and maybe have all the classic players named, etc. And maybe I'll use Houston with Drexler and Olajuwon, and you can use UNC with Jordan and etc. And I think that gameplay is fun. You and I connected on that game at one point, if you remember correctly, via Parsec, and you had a good time.
Oh, yeah. I overlooked that game, 09.
I actually enjoy the gameplay on NCAA Basketball 09 more than NBA Live 09. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of the college structure or college atmosphere that fits the game better or whatnot, because mostly it's the same engine. But I think that the gameplay is loose and fun. I think it's very realistic at times, etc. And the tournament would be really fun with just doing 2 10-minute halves. And I think we'd get a lot of great highlights out of it. And I think we'd have a lot of people interested in participating. But yeah, Parsec has been excellent, and I've been trying to tell so many different people about it. I ended up connecting with Tecmo Bowl GGL. That's his name on Twitter. It's also his name on Discord and whatnot. But him and I connected, and we played the original NBA in the Zone. We also played NBA 2K1, and because he played a lot of 2K1 back in the day, he's a guy that's like our age, and we just had a blast. It was a great connection for him. He was super reactive. He was, making moves on NBA 2K1. You saw the Baron Davis dunk that I posted on Twitter. He was the number one play of the week for the top 10 with that Terry Mills unbelievable free throw line dunk, etc. from NBA in the Zone. So I just can't stop gushing about Parsec. I can't believe the connections that I've been able to make with people through that application, and I just can't believe how functional it is. I just can't believe how well it works.
It took us a while to get into it, but once we, as we said before, remembered the name, and then remember the name, Fort Minor, and then we got into it, it's just been such a big part of our basketball gaming for the past year, and open up all these possibilities, the tournament obviously, but also just being able to connect with people quite randomly. It's something we'll be looking to do with each other, with other people in the community this year, and we want to make that more of a staple of what we do. I mean, modding is a big part of what we do in the community, always will be. Our commentary, our podcasts, my articles, videos, etc. But sustaining a community of people that can connect in these games, because we've talked about the toxicity of the online scene as it's supported in the official online scene in 2K these days. And there's obviously a lot of people that are not happy about that, but it's very difficult to change that culture. So if you can get some people together that would just want to play and develop these friendships and these connections to play basketball games, Parsec is obviously the way to go.
It is. And, this is how you make the most positive memories, right?
It is.
It's how you remember these games and how video game legends are made. And, you look back and say, oh, remember that series that I had on NBA Live 10, or remember that game, or remember that moment. Right? Or remember that time we connected on NBA Jam on Fire Edition, and we had this ridiculous game where we went up on the computer 74-10 and just complete dominance. Like, it's stuff like that creates the best memories. Not, slogging your way through a grind and getting frustrated playing online on, the new 2Ks. And whatnot, and being frustrated by the gambling mechanics and how your player is so underdone, or the player movement because your player is so underdone, etc. So, no, I do think it's great. And I do want to say something, too, about the session that I had with Tecmo Bowl GGL. So we played the original NBA in the Zone. And I also connected with Ad B-Ball Video Games, and we played NBA in the Zone as well. If you remember correctly, I talked on the podcast how last week we played NBA in the Zone 2. So I connected with both of them on the original in the Zone. And for the game with Tecmo Bowl and you wouldn't believe the duel that we had through three quarters with Chris Mullin and Terry Mills. He had Terry Mills, I had Chris Mullin, and we were just going back and forth, absolutely destroying each other for three quarters. Terry Mills is kind of a video game legend now because of those three quarters that he had with him. And like I said to him in the chat, I was like, this is like Bird versus Wilkins, Mills versus Mullin. And I ended up winning, and Mills cooled off in the fourth quarter and everything. But, man, and I was talking to that B-Ball Video Games about this. The original NBA in the Zone is just the best for head-to-head. It is. It doesn't have the annoying double-team logic. The game is more loose. The game has a better pace to it. I just find that the original NBA in the Zone is just a great head-to-head experience.
I actually want to play more of that game, because I do own it. I've actually played a bit more of it in the Zone 2, because it's more of that sim game that I'm used to, and it's got those interesting situations with M guard, C forward, S center standing in for MJ, Chuck, and Shaq. But that was a really great highlight, obviously. So I'm be keen to play a bit more of that one. And going back to those old games, it's something that's difficult to explain to people, because why would you go back and play these old games? And not just because of the dated graphics, although that is a point that people raise, as we've discussed and hit back against before. But certainly games have come a long way, and the idea you would think would be to play the latest one. But something that I've learned about from my basketball gaming habits in 2021, and I'm actually going to go into more detail about this in Monday Tip-Off next week, is that I learned that I was just so committed to playing the latest game and grinding up a player and grinding for cards and trying to get through the seasons in my team, and it's in my career now. And I love that approach. I think that's a great idea for people who want to be on that grind and really enjoy it. But as I've said before, I realized how addictive it can be and it can be fun, but it can be just getting to the point where you realize I'm just doing work. I'm not really enjoying this. I'm just working to make this playable and viable for a year. Then the process starts all over again. Putting that aside and going back and playing some old favorites and checking out some new games with you or by myself last year, developing a new appreciation for Live 10 and 2K14 and Live 06 for Xbox 360. That was just so refreshing. If you're not enjoying the latest game, and we've said it before, I know, but go back and play these old games and make those positive memories and enjoy your time on the virtual hardwood is what it comes down to. To that point, though, Derek, one game that we won't be playing a lot of, except maybe to riff on it but one more time, Kidz Sports Basketball. What a turd.
So, I've played almost every basketball video game ever made. I really have. You and I have vast collections. Like
Indeed.
Big collections, and that was one game that I had never played. And you warned me. You said you were going to play this game, and you're going to realize that this barely resembles basketball. Like this is the closest thing to not being basketball that's being called basketball. Let's put it that way. And I got my hands on the stick, and it was worse than I even thought it was going to be. The passing mechanics might be the worst ever. Like you said, they're treating it like it's a soccer game. They're using the soccer engine. So the passing mechanics, the way you have to pass it, the ball is always getting loose. It's always going out of bounds. It's really hard to direct your pass. The ball just floats in random directions sometimes. Shooting looks ridiculous. They might as well just be kicking it up towards the hoop, to be honest with you. And the only saving grace, that first off, that game looks unfinished. We talked about this. It's like an unfinished game. The only saving grace in the game was me absolutely destroying you with Ginger Clay Thompson.
What a start.
With the redheaded. I don't know what the kid's name is, but I just called him Ginger Clay because of what I was doing to you. No dribbles, just firing all over the floor. Yeah, that was the only thing that was the only saving grace from the game.
So just to do our due diligence here, Kidz Sports, it's a series of games by Data Design Interactive. They made basketball, ice hockey, or hockey if you prefer, international soccer, also known as international football, and mini golf. None of the games have got particularly good scores. IGN, for example, gave Kidz Sports Basketball. This is also Kids with a Z or a Z, if you prefer. Kidz Sports Basketball, because that's cool. Not really, but that's what they were going for. It received a whopping score of 1 out of 10 from IGN. So that's just how good that was. They're shovelware games, basically. They're shovelware for kids, which is kind of strange because, as I was telling you before we started recording, it's actually pretty hard playing it against the CPU on even just a medium difficulty. Not because it's a particularly difficult game control-wise, although it's certainly contrived. But that's the issue, really. It's the mechanics are so broken that once the CPU starts playing competently, you're at a really big disadvantage because you don't have the great control mechanics to actually counteract a competent opponent. It's actually, the game I played against you is probably one of the more fun experiences I've had with that horrible game because it's a fair matchup, user versus user, and we were having fun riffing on it. But you're right. The mechanics were clearly made to be shared among the different sports. The passing would probably work better in a soccer / association football game or hockey, especially hockey because you don't have the out of bounds. As much as we complain about some of the canned passes and passes being on a string in games like NBA Live and NBA 2K, you can see why they do that in basketball games. You need to actually be able to direct that pass directly to a player and have that trajectory of the pass work, instead of just going vaguely in the direction. Trying to make a diagonal pass, as you said, it's going out of bounds. At least 8 times out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. One thing I did like about the game is I did kind of like the, the super shots you could take with the stars that build up.
Yep.
I did like that touch. I think that that's good for arcade games like that. And it gives you something to look forward to when you're going up the court. Like, hey, I can put this in your face now and I have a much higher chance of hitting it. And I did that a couple times actually with Ginger Clay.
Half court.
But yeah, I did one from half court. Exactly. I almost put that in the top 10. I was like, take that. But yeah, I mean, the thing with the Kidz Sports Basketball is when you look at the mechanics, they are far inferior, and I mean by a lot, to games like Tiny Toons Acme All-Stars.
Sure.
Right? Like
sure.
Acme All-Stars Basketball and Looney Tunes Basketball, and games that were made before that one came out with supposedly inferior tech. So like you said, you can tell that the effort wasn't there to make it, a competent basketball game. It is definitely one of the worst, if not the worst, basketball video game, if you can even call it a basketball video game, that I've ever played. And, I connected, like I said, I was playing some of those older games like NBA in the Zone and, NBA 2K1 with Tecmo Bowl GGL. And, man, those games are just so much more competent, right? So the controls make more sense, the action makes more sense, and you can do so much more. Kidz Sports Basketball is just, it's kind of embarrassing.
I love that block shot in 2K1 in the top 10 going into the camera.
How about that cutscene?
I love that.
How about that action replay? I mean, by the way, if you put that in NBA 2K22, people would love it. These kids would be like, "Oh, look at this! I blocked this into into the cameraman, and look at the ball hit the camera or whatever." Like, it's such a really nice touch, and I had to put that in the top 10. I thought it looked really good at the number 10 spot. Kind of went with the music and whatnot. And I'll say this: that Kings team is a little bit overpowering. I did end up blowing out Tecmo Bowl GGL on that game. He was using the Hornets, who aren't that bad, but he had, I think it was like rookie Baron Davis or whatnot, or young Baron Davis. I think David Wesley was actually starting at that time for the Hornets. But that Kings team is a little bit overpowering, and I just absolutely killed him with Weber. And it was really fun using Jason Williams. But I actually, I like 2K1, not as much as the original 2K, but I do like 2K1, and it was really fun to connect on that one again.
Kind of fun that we had a 2K1 and a Live 2001 highlight in this week's top 10.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not love Nate and Roger?
Oh, yeah.
The two guys that play NBA Live 2001. There's the story you're going to hear about a little bit later from the mailbag. They talk about their experiences with Live 2001. I think it was in like the late 2000s when they were still playing that and whatnot. These guys are the most hardcore NBA Live 2001 gamers and most dedicated Live 2001 gamers I have ever met.
Easily.
I mean, easily. And you can hear it from their commentary, and I make sure to leave that in the highlights that I post. Every now and then I have to bleep out some swearing and whatnot from Roger, but they are just having an absolute blast playing that game. And I love to see it. That's what you live for right there.
I think
it's fantastic.
It's inspirational, really. I mean, this may sound like being melodramatic, being exaggerating it a bit too much, but honestly, in an era where there's a lot of very childish trash talk, or it is about grinding up players and wearing Crocs on your players' feet, just that pure enjoyment of head to head and really loving that game. And not claiming that, it's the best game ever and it's perfect and it's way better than a game that came out 10, 15 years later, or saying that there's been no advancement since. It's not about that. It's just that it is a game that they know back to front, clearly, and have so much fun going head-to-head on and creating different content, updating the rosters or creating different classic teams, things like that. Again, that inspires me as a basketball gamer, as somebody who has moved away too far away from my roots, because that's the kind of thing I would have loved to do. What I love to do, stick with an old favorite. It's what I used to do, but then I got into the whole habit of grinding, and yes, had some fun with it, but I realized just how much of a rut I was in. A comfortable rut, but a rut nevertheless. Just to give you a little preview of this week's Monday Tip-Off, that's pretty much a quote. But that is the case, and they just do some great content. I love seeing their highlights in the top 10.
Yeah, I wanted to say actually a funny story too. But so I connected with that B-ball video games, and like I just said, we played NBA in the Zone, and I actually used the Celtics in that game, and I had about 8 blocks with Eric Montross. And if you've ever played NBA in the Zone, the blocks just feel damn good. Like when you get a block and you challenge somebody at the rim, and whether you swat it out of bounds or you keep the ball in play, there's this really loud swat noise that happens, and you're like, get that out of here. You know what I mean? Like, it's absolutely fantastic. So we had a blast playing NBA in the zone. He was in the chat stating, you know, boy, this is better than NBA in the zone too for head to head. And he's like, and I agree with him. I think they tried a little bit too hard to make it a little bit too different from the original within the zone too. But yeah, we just had a blast on NBA in the zone. But then afterwards, he didn't have much time, but I wanted to show him the URB 2005 All-Star, 2005 roster. And then I wanted to show him real quick how accurate the All-Star game was. So like the jerseys, the court, the players, and just how well overall it played on NBA 2K14. So we get in there and he said, I only have time for one quarter. And this is how you know somebody is having fun. We get through the first quarter and he's like, oh, I can keep going. Yeah. We get past the second quarter and he's like, no, we can keep going. We can pass the third quarter. And then we ended up finishing the game. And that's what it's all about. You know what I mean? That's what I missed. That, you know, it's the whole, you know what, I don't have a lot of time, but this is just too damn fun. Or this looks so cool and I just want to keep playing it, etc. And I really like that moment that I had with him connected on Parsec because, you know what? Maybe he didn't have the time to finish that game, but he made sure to finish that game because he was just having a blast.
It is what it's supposed to be all about, having fun, not work. You know, not to beat a dead horse on that one, but it has become about that. And getting back to just playing basketball. Said it before, say it again, because I think it's so important that to put it out there, because I know how easy it is to fall into those habits of a dependable experience, because, I know how to grind, I know how to maximize, fit my time efficiently, grinding for XP and VC and whatever. And that's fun for a year or two, maybe. But then it gets into a habit and you just do it because it's routine. And gaming shouldn't be routine, no matter what genre you're playing. One final point about Kidz Sports Basketball before we put that to bed for forever, or at least until we want to riff on it again. It's funny because it feels like they're trying to... I mean, this may be giving them too much credit to say that it's more than just the shovelware crap that it is. But it seems that they were trying to introduce kids to basketball because they had concepts that you wouldn't perhaps normally have in an arcade game for kids. Like you have fouls, for example, and you have out of bounds. So you have things that represent the real sport in a cartoony kind of way, in a kiddie, arcadey, cartoony kind of way. But then you can just hop up the court. You can travel. So you're calling fouls, but you can just hop up the court and just to avoid
like the highlight. Yeah, the Twitter post that I did actually from Kidz Sports Basketball, where I showed basically this defines our experience. It was like you jumping like 2 or 3 times and then shooting an air ball that went out of bounds or something like that. I'm just like, what is this? Like, this is terrible.
It is, and then pressing one button because you got the jump button. So to do a jump shot, you have to jump and then press shoot. Otherwise, you just do a little fling from the floor, which looks, come to think of it, looking at that little one-handed shot looks very much like you might see the goalie throwing the ball, the soccer ball, the football, out of the 18s in a football game. So they've clearly recycled some animations. You can see how they've just taken 4 sports and tried to cram them into this one, let's say, engine of a sports gaming engine. But it's just got all these weird concepts. You've got the clock counting up instead of down for a start, which again is very much like football.
I said that too. I was like, wait a minute, why is the clock counting up? And you said football. Soccer engine, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the playtime, there's a shot clock, but they call it playtime. So there's all these little concepts like they're trying to introduce kids to basketball. But quite frankly, if you want to give kids a good basketball game, I mean, back then, give them one of the NBA Jam games at the time. Give them Jam 2004, Acclaim's game. The best Jam game that Acclaim made, that one that came out around about the same time. Although this, we did see, Kidz Sports Basketball did come out on PC, so I don't have that version. I have the PS2 version that we played. But hey, modding. Well, think of the modding possibilities.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare double up and get the PC version for one. And don't you dare, if you get the PC version, consider modding that game. It doesn't deserve it.
No.
We can't give it that much time. We just can't. There's so many other things we could be playing. I would recommend My Career over that. I'd say go to My Career on 2K22.
Get some
over
Crocs.
That.
Get some Crocs.
Yeah, go get some Crocs. That would be better than playing Kidz Sports Basketball. But no, yeah, it's pretty bad. We're going to have to try some other games together. and give our opinions, some of the less well-received games, because I think that our listeners would like to, listen in on that stuff.
Absolutely. But, speaking of modding, we also connected on with 2K13. Probably our best game of a Steam game, you and I connecting on, and playing with the... Was it URB or UBR that we played the 2003 All-Star game with?
Well, there was no UBR for 2K13. Remember, Hawk sat out that year.
URB, of course,
yeah,
URB, absolutely.
So this was Sco Adam. This was the URB. So Slim and Sco Adams roster. And we played, and I thought it would be really cool for us to connect this way, because I know you're a huge fan of the Wizards, Jordan, as I was. I mean, maybe not at the time because you were a huge Bills fan, but you were happy to see him back.
In a way.
And whatnot. In a way, right. But, I thought it would be cool for us to connect on the 2003 All-Star game, with the correct jerseys, the correct court, the game where Jordan hit that amazing shot on Sean Marion that, sent the game into overtime and whatnot. But, yeah, actually, wait, did that send it into overtime, or did that get blown at that point?
That was going to be the game winner, but then...
That's going to be the game
winner. Jermaine O'Neal's foul blew it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Jermaine O'Neal's foul blew it, yeah. But it was that amazing fadeaway on Sean Marion. But so, yeah, we connected on NBA 2K13, and, historically we've had a little bit of issues with lag with Steam. But ever since they did some updates to the application and we found our settings, some better settings for the app, our Steam experiences have been a lot better. And you were able to do a lot in that game, and I thought it was a really good game. You hit some really nice fadeaways with Jordan. You almost had a top 5 play with Tracy McGrady if you had finished that dunk.
No, I went for it. So I said I went for it.
You really went for it, and that would have been an incredibly loud, amazing dunk, but it ended up back rimming and going out of bounds and whatnot. But, man, it was actually a really fun experience. Playing 2K13 and playing that All-Star game and whatnot. And I was really glad that it worked well for you. And how about those dribbling mechanics on 2K13? I still like those better than what we have today.
It's not 1-to-1, so they hadn't quite got that yet. I like maybe 2K17 a lot more, for example. I think they did improve it by that point.
2K17's dribbling is fantastic. I agree with you. Yeah.
But that being said, it was such a huge step up from the isomotion approach in previous games. It worked really well. I love 2K13. It was a lot of fun to revisit that, especially with such a quality mod. The accuracy in that was just fantastic. The alley-oops. I mean, while we're wailing on dead horses here, not having an alley-oop meter, how good does that feel?
It was great. I mean, you and I were looking for those alley-oop opportunities whenever we got on the break. And we did complete quite a few. I'd have to go back and look at the footage, because I think we may have had a couple top 10s in there. But how cool is it to throw alley-oops in NBA 2K13 and 2K14? I mean, it's reactive. Your players go up the way they should. They throw it down hard, with authority and whatnot. And there's so many different alley-oop animations that are triggered and whatnot. I love the alley-oops in those games. And, when we were playing NBA 2K14, me and at B-Ball Video Games, we were doing the same thing. We were getting out on the break. Really fun getting out on the break with the UBR and URB. And, we're throwing alley-oops to each other at the rim, throwing alley-oops to Kevin Garnett, throwing alley-oops to Dwayne Wade, etc. And it just felt awesome. And, yeah, you're right. Without a meter, and Teddy Bear the Gamer, I know he appreciates this, us talking about this, because he hates the meter.
Rightfully so.
Ruined 2K20. He said it ruined 2K22 for him. But, yeah, without the meter, it's the way it should be. Let's put it that way.
Look how many alley-oops I sent to you when I was playing 2K14 my career, and then a few when I was playing some IGM as well. Some alley-oops to and from rows, of course, from my player to various players on the 76ers. It just felt so satisfying to throw. And people say, oh, it's more challenging and skill gap and everything. Not really. It's a very phony way of adding a learning curve or a supposed skill gap to the game, especially when it's...
The mechanic doesn't even work right.
Well, yeah.
Exactly, right.
I mean, to dust off an old example, do the 3 shoot buttons in Live 07 give that a great skill gap, or is it just a bad idea in a bad game?
Right, exactly. No, I agree. And like I said, up and down, we agree with Teddy Bear the Gamer. And, I hope that he did stick with his guns and go back to the PC version or the Xbox One version, etc., whichever one he was playing for last gen. And because if that's the experience that he enjoys, that's what he should be playing.
100%, 100%. But you pointed out while we were playing the All-Star game, how tough is that West All-Stars? When you started firing away with Pager and Dirk and knocking down those threes, that was tough.
It's funny. I went to my bench, and that's when I blew out the game. Right?
It's
shooters. Yeah, it's when I went to Dirk and I went to Pager and whatnot, and I was just firing all over the floor with Dirk and Pager, and they were smoking it. The West was incredibly stacked back then. You look at that lineup, and you look at Kobe and Garnett and Duncan and Shaq, and and Pager and Dirk, and just they are loaded, and that's why I laugh when people are like, oh, the evolution, the players are better, bigger, faster, stronger today, all of this stuff. I look back at those all-star teams and I compare them to today's, and I just got to say, you guys got to be kidding me. These teams are fantastic. And the team you were using was strong as well. And I thought you did a really good job using Jordan and getting him in the post and getting him in the mid-range and whatnot, and using him kind of like the way Jordan was used in real life back then. And I thought that the roster also accommodated that pretty well. Like, you weren't able to, like, explode with Jordan like it was his, like, 88, 89 self.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Like, I went for a dunk and just got fouled and, like, didn't get close to even close to what I was doing with T-Mac, as was the case. This shouldn't. He was 40 after all. Some of that athleticism had gone. But I was forcing it a little bit at times, but at the same time I was trying to do that because, if you recall in that game, he missed his first, I think, was it 7 shots? Because they were kind of getting it to him to just shoot it every time, and he bricked a couple to begin that game. So I felt it kind of sim doing that, but it felt appropriate to use it that way because that was his farewell game and that celebration.
Yeah, no, I definitely remember that. I was actually watching that game recently, which is what sparked my interest in doing this with you on Parsec. And then also I watched the 2005 All-Star game in full with my brother, and I was like, man, I got to throw on the UBR, right? I got to put that roster and those teams on the floor. So that's what I did. And I was like, this looks so cool. I want to share that experience with somebody. So that's when I reached out to B-Ball Video Games and said, hey, check this out. Let's play the 2005 All-Star game. And that's when we played. So, I love being able to go back to those rosters. And that's what the amazing thing about the UBR and the URB is. They have so many different seasons covered. And the art is just fantastic between the cyber faces, the floors, the Dornas, the stadiums, the logos, all of this stuff, the jerseys, that you can go back and play almost any season using any teams in NBA history and get a quality, fun, nostalgic experience. So that's the great thing about URB and UBR.
And there is a new version of URB in the pipeline, I believe, coming out soon. And there's actually a new public release of UBR. Hawk was on hiatus for a while there, but he has come back with a public release, which he's posted in the forum. New URB coming as well. So again, the way that 2K13, 2K14 are being kept alive by those mods, and those are games that people love to revisit. Again, lobs are great to throw in those games. They hold up extremely well. You can say that the graphics aren't as good. The graphics are fine, and if all you want is pretty graphics, you can get
fantastic. I don't want to hear the snobby graphics people and all that. Oh, this looks like... Listen, the graphics are just fine. So are the animations. They're fine. And you know what? It's about the gameplay. And what do those two games have? Very, very fun, solid gameplay. So, I want to say one more thing, too, about the UBR team coming back. And there's a lot of work done by a lot of different people on that UBR roster, people making some of the presentation mods as well, and then Hawk's work also putting it together and everything. But they're doing like different presentations for each era. So we got like 80s scoreboards, 90s scoreboards, 2000 scoreboards, 10 scoreboards, etc. I believe they have graphics filters as optional downloads and whatnot. There's a new boot up intro for either Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan. I want to say there was one for LeBron and whatnot. And it's actually video highlights with audio, which I didn't even know you could do. And that will replace the whole LeBron saying, what is it, like basketball isn't easy, or whatever he says at the beginning of the game. So it's just true customization and true love for the sport and its history. And like I stated, that's what makes the UBR and the URB projects it's what makes those projects timeless, right? 10 years, 10, 15, 20 years from now, you're going to still be able to put on those games, load up those projects and just have a great experience.
And you can say the same for the 2K19 mods that you're involved with as well, and of course headed up by Stildo33, One Kidney Kenny. Just the amazing amount of effort that's going into those mods as well, and we've talked about some of the forthcoming releases for those mods. You and I have taken that approach with our mods over the years. I'm very much inspired to finally get back into some more modding this year. Again, these are the things you can do when you're not grinding for VC. You can actually spend some time playing other games and working on other projects. I actually was dabbling a little bit with an old favorite, and I showed you a little bit of a preview over Parsec.
Yeah, we connected on Parsec. And that's another great thing about Parsec, right? You can just be like, hey, Derek, I want to show you something, and boom.
Exactly.
We connect. You can see it in pristine quality. Like, it just looks great. Like, it's like I'm there with you, basically. But yeah, we connected on Parsec, and you showed me the NBA Live 96 all-time teams roster mod that you're working on. And we've already talked about it. The presentation on NBA Live 96 is almost second to none. Right. It's just fantastic. It's colorful. The huge portraits, the big lettering and numbers, via presentation and whatnot. It is a great game for presentation. But yeah, you were going through some of the rosters and showing me the start of this all-time teams roster mod, and it looks like it's coming out great. And the cool thing is that those tools that you use for NBA Live 96, you know them like the back of your hand. Right. So you should be able to, dive right in and, work your way through that project pretty fast. I'm not going to say that it's going to be super fast. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but knowing the tools is half the battle.
It really is. And there's just as this nostalgia for visiting those games and replaying them, revisiting and replaying them years later. The same goes with modding, and that's why a lot of people do stick with those games. They know how to mod and they know how to get the most out of them, which we've definitely seen again with UBR and URB. And of course the 2K19 retro season rosters as well. It's certainly very much a beta stage at the moment. But the great thing about Alive 96 modding is that there's not a lot of player ratings. There's no faces. There's no face textures. So you can create a player, override the existing players very, very quickly, and make something that looks, I think, pretty good. I showed you some Lakers versus Celtics, all-time Lakers versus all-time Celtics, and I thought there's some limited face options. Obviously, you have to have Kareem with goggles and hair, which towards the end of the career he had the shaved head and just the goggles. But I thought that the effect is still there. I thought that came out pretty good. It
still looked good because you got to remember Kareem did have goggles with short hair at one point in his career too. So in like the early to early mid 80s, he did have that look. So no, I thought it looked really good. Now, as far as portraits, are those pretty easy to put in for you?
Those are tougher. It's easier to blank out the portraits, to be honest.
I feel like just diving in to try to help you with that. I'd make you portraits too.
If we can get it right with the right background and everything, Pick Ed that we have for Live 96 will actually import it, or you can just blank out the portraits. Either way, we can make that work. But yeah, it's. That would definitely enhance the whole situation. There's going to be some things you can't do. For example, there's going to be players that are drafted after 1999, so their draft year is going to show up as, for example, 1915. If you put a player in there that's drafted in 2015, or like a LeBron and Melo drafted in 2003, it's going to come up 1903. That's just the way the text strings work in the game. The only draft year you can change is the final two digits, but that only shows up on some screens, on a few screens, basically. So it doesn't affect things. Don't affect the gameplay. There's some things in the presentation, but there's not much you can do there. It's just the text strings. But no, I'm looking forward to getting a version 1.0 out there, and maybe we can put some more portraits in there. It's just a matter of getting the right background and transparency settings and everything from the time. It's a bit finicky, but it might actually be possible. So that would be cool.
I'll tell you what, if you can export one of the portraits that are in the game and send it to me, I'll send you back one for Kareem and we can test it out.
Sounds good.
I think that would be a lot of fun. I did want to bring up one other thing, too, about NBA Live 10. I know this is kind of a little bit off track, but hey, it's still basketball gaming. One really cool thing I found when I was playing in the series against Cavs 4872, and maybe you appreciated this about the game as well, and it's something that they really failed on NBA Live 19 and NBA Live 18. When on NBA Live 10, when you have a switch, like a big guy switched onto a quicker player, you have a really big advantage in NBA Live 10. And I love that touch. basically during the series with Cavs 4872, he went big with his starting lineup, and he had Z at power forward and Shaq at center. And what I would do is I would initiate switches where by setting picks and screens and whatnot, and I would get Shaq or Z on J.R. Smith or Carmelo Anthony or Chauncey Billups. And whenever that happened, I was able to make a move. Of course, I still had to make a move and a quick move to get by them, but I was able to get by them a lot easier than faster players on the perimeter, right? Guards, point guards, forwards, small forwards and whatnot. And that's something that games have really struggled with, including games in the NBA Live series in the past. So I just wanted to say that was a really nice touch on NBA Live 10, and it definitely helped me out in that series, being able to, use my speed and attack those big men.
Well, one of the things that probably helped out there is that NBA Live 10 had signature running animations for players.
Yeah. I mean, you can see it. You can see the love in that game. You can see they tried really hard with NBA Live 10. It is mind-blowing that they blew it after that game. Like, that's the game you're going to blow it after? Like, it doesn't, you can tell that there was a lot of signature stuff in there. You had size ups, like you said, specific running animations. You had the amazing presentation elements that we've talked about on the podcast, the Vince Carter boos in other arenas, the Shaq Superman music after he throws it down. You can see that on the highlight videos that I posted, etc. Like, man,
Steve
there was
Nash.
a lot of
Steve Nash sitting on the floor instead of the bench.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Like, little stuff like that. You can tell there's a lot of love put into NBA Live 10, and it's kind of depressing to think about, what happened to the series after that.
It's mind-blowing that, they had that apparently in the background, that even before Live 10 was in production, they had this idea for NBA Elite 11, that they didn't, when they saw that game was well-received and people were really digging it, that they went away from it, and they thought, well, okay, this is actually, I suppose you've already committed to those ideas, but you're going to do that, and you're going to drive away Beluba, and you're going to drive away other people that worked on the game at the time, and you're going to bring in somebody who's used to hockey games and things like that, and you're still going to go in that direction when you can see how much of a bad idea that is.
That's the suits screwing up.
Apparently, it was the developers. Apparently, they had this idea. That's the weird part, is that the suits didn't actually demand it. They did, because that was always what I thought, was that the suits said, "Oh, this didn't sell well enough. We need to change everything." But I went back and read it could be suits pushing the blame, I suppose. But I went back and read some postmortems of NBA Elite 11 at the time, and yeah, there's a lot of story about how this stuff was being worked on in the background, and yeah, it's disappointing.
That's even worse somehow. Like, that means it could have been preventable. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, come to the suits, it feels like it could be a little bit more preventable. Maybe there were egos involved or something. I don't know. I just think it's crazy. And that's why I always say things, it's evolution. Things get better in time. And, games, you think things got worse? Well, yeah, when bad practices take place and bad decisions are made, things can decline. And the NBA Live series is, proof of that.
And 2K, we've had missteps. 2K18, as we've talked about many times before as well, how we feel about that one. And I thought that 2K19 rebounded in a lot of ways. And, of course, 2K17 before it was fantastic. So you do have missteps and you have design ideas. And, of course, 2K18 did things like charging for haircuts, which is a conceptual problem more than a gameplay problem, obviously. But at the same time, games make missteps. You have the idea that everything always gets better, that if that was the case, every sequel of every movie would be better than last, and no TV shows would decline. No, there would be no dork age of comic books and things like that. Look at pretty much every medium. People have found certain eras have been in decline, and they've come back. They've rebounded in many cases as well, but there's been times when they've gone off the rails, or TV shows have run too long and not been so good at the end. It's a thing.
Or music.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, there's people that remake a lot of the classics, and the remakes are, frankly, terrible sometimes. Or they're not close to the original, or the quality is poor.
I mean, how many times do people say, well, I like that artist's or that band's early work? That the latest stuff is just kind of them cashing in on their name.
Right, exactly. So, and that's the point I wanted to make is, like I said, not everything gets better over time. Bad practices over time can make anything decline. And improper use of technology, right? Because the minds behind it are pretty damn important, and how they use that, and, are they going to get the best out of it? But no, I did want to wrap that section up as far as, Parsec goes in the tournament and everything. I just wanted to say it's been awesome. And I think that 2022 is going to be one hell of a year for basketball gaming, not only for you and I, but for the community in general. We've had many more people join the Parsec Discord, and I've been connecting with some new people recently, and whatnot. And I think that we're going to see a lot of great highlights this year. There's going to be a lot of memories created, and it's just going to be. I think it's going to be a really good year of basketball gaming.
Absolutely, we were very optimistic last year, and certainly the top 10 to tip off the year, I thought was just maybe one of the best so far. Just some of those dunks, those highlights that we saw, the cold-blooded daggers in the clutch, as I put it in the video description. Just, yeah, I love that top 10 to tip things off.
Many great highlights were submitted. And we had some new entries in there. We had Tecmo Bowl, GGG, Popcorn, at Popcorn 77, Popcorn Jones 77, excuse me. We had such a good mixture. We had the Weber block from 2K1, so a defensive play. We had a couple game winners, one from 2K22, Kyrie Irving from the Live King, a nice step back game winner and whatnot. And then we had a game winner by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's the Popcorn Jones highlight. And we had a Pippen 3 from the corner from NBA Live 2001 that tied up the game and sent it into overtime. And that's Nate Stasho and Roger Ward. The NBA Live 2001 guys. And then we obviously had some great dunks, the dunks from Cavs 4872 on NBA Live 10 and the number one play, which was the NBA in the zone dunk, etc. So, yeah, I thought it was a really good variety of highlights, a good variety of games stretching across many different decades. And it was really fun putting it together and kind of cutting up the highlights the way that I thought would see fit into that 2 minute and 20-second time frame that I try to fit it into. Putting the Marv Albert, Derrick Rose call on the Dives highlight, the NBA 2K21 dunk that he did and whatnot. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And I think the 2022 is going to be really good for the top 10 as well, because more and more people are connecting on Parsec, right? And I'm having more sessions too with more and more people. And I think there's going to be a lot of highlights generated from that.
No doubt. And we mentioned the T-Mac dunk that I couldn't pull off that might have been a top 10, even a top 5. But I tell you what, if I'd managed to get that game winner in Basketball Classics with Mickey Jansen, but you blocked it. Yeah, that could have been top 10 if I'd got that as a game winner.
We haven't talked about that. Really quick. So Andrew and I played Basketball Classics, and I was talking to my brother about this too after, and I'll go over that in a second. But Andrew and I connected on Basketball Classics. He used the 91 Chicago. I used the 91 Portland. And man, that game was a blast. There were so many different aspects of the game competitively that work so well, like trying to get the chase down blocks, trying to guess in order to like block each other at the rim on dunks, intercepting passes or getting, on ball steals, shooting threes with the right players, because if you don't shoot a three with the right player in that game, oftentimes it's an air ball, right? So shooting threes with the right players and timing your shots, man, my brothers and I would have died to have that game as a kid. I got to be honest with you. And the reason is because how they have like the individual player stats at the end of the games. We would have been writing that stuff down in notepads. We would have been starting our own leagues. We would have been naming the players, all of that stuff. We would have been, like I said, utilizing all of those competitive aspects of the game and really enjoying them, like contesting each other at the rim, trying to chase each other down, all of that stuff. We would have died to have a game like Basketball Classics as a kid. Josh and Dave did such a good job with that game. And we said, I think your first words to me after the game ended, I beat you in overtime. You said pretty epic. And I thought that was a fitting way to, sum up our gameplay experience.
It really was. And friends of the show, Josh and Dave from Nemo Gameo, you just can't say enough good things about that game, what they did. I said it when I first played it, that when I played it when it was still in pre-release, basically, was it Steam Greenlight or beta? I forget what that was called now, but playing it at that time, I said, this is better than Double Dribble. This is better than the games of back in the day. This is already fun, and it's not even complete yet. And since then, we've got season mode, we've got the roster editor, which does everything you want. Very robust for that. Again, 2 people working on this game, and it is it's just a fantastic game, and it is so playable. And again, it shows how you don't need to have the tremendous graphics. You can have those old school graphics, and it's still because it's about the experience. It's about that, and I know it banks on nostalgia in large part, but I've seen younger people take to it as well. And just as they take to games like a Shovel Knight is a game I brought up. These platformers that are made in that old school way with the 16-bit or 8-bit graphics, and they just work because there's so much love put into it. And yeah, again, you just can't gush enough about what Josh and Dave have done with Basketball Classics.
And how fun was it head to head?
Yes.
Like how fun was it against another human being? That's how you can tell too. A lot of times that's what can bring out the best in a game, right? And I had a lot more fun playing against you than I do against the computer. I thought it was just a really enjoyable experience. I loved the back and forths. I loved the picks that you were setting and then sitting behind him and hitting a three with John Paxson. I was rewatching the game and I saw you do that. Running the pick and rolls and hitting players off screens and, kind of using strategy against each other. I agree with you that definitely the gameplay is better than double dribble and whatnot. They should be really proud of the product that they put out.
And of course, we need to get Josh and Dave on the show whenever they're up for it as well. It's been a while.
No, absolutely. But we might be getting Stildo 33, One Kidney Kenny on the show next week. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's something we want to do this year as well. Look, we'll always reach out to personalities, to developers and whatnot. But we've been talking about it, and we thought, yeah, it'd be great to have some more people from the community on here and talk to them as well and share gaming experiences, and especially if we've connected with them to play. But even if we haven't, just chatting to some more people from the community is something we'd like to do this year. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
I'd say that's probably one of our goals for the podcast this year. Get some community members on here, even some other game developers and whatnot, if we can get them on here. And I think that would just be really fun content for the rest of the community to listen to.
Absolutely. It's all about the participation and the communication with our listeners. And hey, to that end, Derek, it's time for the mailbag.
To the mailman, the pump fake. What an unbelievable dunk!
Man, what a smooth segue, Derek. My smooth segues are back for 2022.
It's impressive. You're starting off the year right. I know that was one of your New Year's resolutions.
So you threw out another prompt there, Derek. What is the biggest fight you got into playing basketball video games? What game were you playing and who was the fight with? And yeah, we got a couple of responses there. Actually, we got a very detailed response from One Kidney Kenny, Stildo, which we may have to get him on there. When we get him on, he might have to tell the story himself, because that's a long story. And I kind of want to hear that in his voice, because that was just a crazy story that he shared with us. But we do have some stories to share of our own, plus one from Roger and Nate there. But yeah, it's one of those things, it's competitive. And we talked about how much goodwill there was in the NBA Live 10 tournament that we ran. But, sometimes when you're playing head-to-head with someone you know very well on a couch, it can get heated.
Especially a sibling.
Yeah.
Like I talked about on the last episode. And I actually asked that question and shared a highlight that was part of a fight between my brother and I. So I put that highlight as part of the question. I was like, note, this highlight below was the start of a fight. And what that was, real quick, was NBA 2K17. We were playing our My League against each other using my Ultimate Classic Teams roster. And I was using the 05-06 Nets, and he was using the 07-08 Celtics. And he's very competitive with his team. He just never wants to lose with his team. And he's admittedly a bit of a sore sport. My brother Nick is a sore sport. He knows it. We've talked about it. And I was absolutely destroying him with Vince Carter in the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game. I think I erased a double-digit lead, ended up winning at the end of the game. And he had very few losses on the season. He had played against me in every game. And that dunk, after I crossed him over and dunked it on Kevin Garnett and Kendrick Perkins at the rim, and it was really loud, set off this storm of kind of playful insults, but this storm of, this is BS, blah, blah, blah. He wasn't able to do that this consistently. And it was all this whole thing like, oh, you shouldn't be dominating with Vince Carter this way and all of that stuff. And it was a pretty big fight actually between the two of us after I won the game. And I want to say that after the game ended, because after that dunk, I killed him with a few more shots with Vince Carter. After the game ended, I'm pretty sure he went off complaining for an hour. about what had just transpired, and then he wouldn't talk to me for a little bit. So like when you're playing against siblings, the wars can be amplified by quite a lot.
You know, it's funny. People talk about board games and how Monopoly will break up a family. A game of Monopoly and other such board games, but it's the same with video games as well. We get competitive. We want to win.
No, absolutely. And you know what? I get a little chippy sometimes with the way I talk. Like when Rick Smits, like I talked about the last podcast, like when Rick Smits put out 60 points and 20 rebounds on me, I'm not going to lie. I was kind of pissed.
Yeah.
And I was like, Rick Smits should not be dominating me like Wilt Chamberlain. And he was in that game. And I did have words for it. I said, things like, oh, do you feel good about that? Like taking little jabs about it. Like, do you think that's realistic? Do you feel good about doing that to me with Rick Smits? And what's funny is Stildo33, one of his responses to my question was, I feel like you and I would get into some heated moments or get into fights. And he might be right. Because we've had some trash talking back and forth during our Parsec sessions and everything. And we're going to be starting a 94-95 season on 2K19 in 2022. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were some heated moments between me and Stildo33.
Need to get you mic'd up for that, obviously.
I gotta start doing mic'd up sessions. It's tough sometimes because I have a full house. But you and I too. We got to do some mic'd up sessions this year.
Well, we were going to do that for Kidz Sports Basketball at one point, just so that we could tear it apart. But that means having to play it again. So that's the downside.
No, people might think we liked it the way I was talking about Ginger Clay. I don't know if that would have been good. They would have been like, maybe I need to go out and get this game, because remember, I was almost trash talking you in a way with Ginger Clay because I was absolutely hitting everything with him on you.
I mean, there was a fun aspect to it because we were both laughing and ripping on the game, but that's kind of where the fun begins and ends, really. Like it's not something that's not going to be a staple of our Parsec sessions. I don't think somehow.
I don't think we'll be playing that again. Maybe ever. Maybe only to be mic'd up. Maybe that's the only next session. Maybe we might do that. I don't know.
If we're doing some kind of feature on the worst games we've ever played or something, it may make an appearance, but it's definitely not going to be a game of choice. But thinking back to some of my heated moments with friends, I remember one afternoon playing with one of my oldest friends from school, Danny, and we were playing NBA Jam Tournament Edition Super Nintendo. It had been, I think he rented it at the time. Neither of us owned it, but I think he rented it from memory. And we always had a gentleman's agreement about cheat codes, like the dunk from anywhere, that you could punch them in, but both people playing had to have a code activated. So if we were going to go hard against each other with this, we were both going to have to be souped up, and if you didn't get the code in, we'd quit out and get punched in the code all over again, restart the game. So we were now having some fun with that, but I don't know, there's some I can't quite remember what happened, but something, I don't know whether I was just beating him too much, or maybe we kind of had words over the cheat we were using or something, and it kind of got a bit nasty, and he's sort of like yelling out like, "Oh, I didn't even want to invite you over in the first place." It was like kind of mean-spirited actually, and yeah, it kind of got a bit. I think we were about 11 or 12 at the time, so I don't know, sort of getting that preteen bluster and everything, and like I'm like, whoa, and his mum was like, yeah, Daniel, no, that's not how you, it's like kind of like that's very uncool of you to say, and kind of backed up, and we've known each other for years, we're still friends, but yeah, it kind of got very, very tense there that afternoon. From memory, it was because one of us was using the cheats more effectively or something like that, but it was, yeah, that we kind of had to take a break from playing, at least playing Jam against each other for a while there.
Daniel, listening to this podcast after shaking his fist, remembering this moment, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right.
No, yeah, I think it's. I think sometimes it can get unhealthy. I know that there's been moments where one of my brothers has stormed out. He was so upset, and it's usually the three of us hanging out, and I'll look over at my brother Nick, and I'll say something like, "I feel bad." You know what I mean? Like, I feel bad that just ended that way. And that's when it gets a little bit unhealthy, and it goes a little bit over the top. I do want to say that there is a slightly different dynamic with siblings, and I understand that. And I understand that our wars are not everybody else's wars, and ours can get a little bit more intense. But I do want to say that overall, I'd say probably 99.9% of the time, we're having a good time. And a lot of times jabs that do happen, they're friendly jabs and playful jabs and whatnot.
Well, that's right, and that's fine. I mean, that's all part of competing, and that you've got that healthy enough relationship to be able to do that. And it's just kind of when it goes a little bit too far, or somebody hasn't eaten that day or something, so they're a little bit cranky, a little bit hangry, if you will. So I mean, there's the different things that go into that, but it's important, especially not to start throwing hands when you start. You don't want to let the punches fly when it comes to games, because at the end of the day, as seriously as we take our basketball gaming, it is supposed to be a game and in good fun at the end of the day.
Yeah, nothing physical has ever happened.
That's good.
Nothing we've never even at our young age, like when we were, playing in the early 90s and whatnot against each other, there was nothing ever physical. And you'd expect maybe something would happen back then, physical, because you're kids and you're fighting, right? But no, I think that Roger Ward and Nate Stasio, I knew they'd have a story, right?
Oh, yes.
For this. Yeah, I knew that they would, because you can tell that their sessions get intense by the highlights that they submit and the commentary behind them. So I have a feeling you have that right up in front of you if you want to read what they said.
I do. And so this is from Nate. In 2009-2010, Roger and I bet $1 on a game of NBA Live 2001. I won, of course, and Roger continued to bet double or nothing for 7 straight games until he ended up owing me over $100. He still holds it against me that I made him pay a portion of it. Now we don't bet money anymore. Yes, when money gets involved, it gets even more controversial.
No, we never did that. I thought that was kind of cool that they even did that. And I'm sure that happens with other families as well, or other friendships. But, my brothers and I, or my friends and I, we never put money on any games, which is surprising because in the mid-2000s, during the Texas Hold'em craze, the poker craze.
Absolutely.
Me and a large group of people every single week, and some of them played basketball video games, and I played some basketball video games with them. We would have weekly poker sessions, once or twice a week, a big group of us, and we loved to gamble that way and play Texas Hold'em. And it's really wild that we never wagered on a basketball video game because many of us loved them. So no, I thought that was a cool story. I'm not surprised that they're still going at it and they still talk about it today, because my brothers and I still talk about our wars on basketball games and our old arguments. Even today, it gets brought up on phone conversations. It gets brought up when we're hanging out, etc. And then we take playful jabs at each other and use it against each other and everything. And you could see during their conversation on Twitter, when they were talking about this situation, they were still making jabs at each other about it. He's like, I bet you use the Timberwolves in one of those matchups or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that they do that and that they're so into it.
I tell you, Derek, these gambling mechanics in basketball games, it's such a problem.
Right. Even going back then, right? No.
Literal gambling mechanics, yeah.
Literal gambling mechanics. Which brings me to, we're talking about monetization. I mean, this is different. This isn't gambling. But I was thinking about maybe for the next tournament, continuing with the idea of a $20 Steam gift card or something like that for the winter, just for a little bit of incentive. And I think that you would agree that might be a good idea to get, people even more pumped and competitive in the tournament.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's always something to play for. Like we said, we also get a story from Stildo, from One Kidney Kenny, which is just a crazy story about a 7-game series with a friend on, he believes NBA Shootout 97. Just very heated moments there. But yeah, we're hoping to get him on, and hopefully when that happens, we can get him to tell the story, because it's something else.
Yeah, it sounds like he's open to coming on to the show. He'd like to record on Friday, so maybe we can get that together and whatnot. And I think he would be a great guest. He's a guy that's roughly around our age, super passionate about basketball gaming. He's loved basketball games all of his life. He also played basketball and was a top scorer in high school as well. So he's also a baller, you could say. And maybe he has some stories about that as well. I think he would be a great guest to have on the show, and I think it'd be a good idea to hear the story from him as opposed to us trying to read it off.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can do it justice, so we might hold on to that one until we can get Kenny on the show. But that will be something we look to do ASAP whenever we can fit in with his schedule. And again, it's something we want to do this year, bring some more people from the community on, as well as other figures. Like, again, always have the always an open invitation to Josh and Dave from Nemo Gamo and other people within the industry, which we'll love to chat to. But yeah, more people from the community as well, and hear their stories, because we all have stories about basketball gaming. We're all passionate about it. It's clearly at least one of our favorite genres throughout the community. So yeah, that'll be fun to do this year.
Absolutely. I can't wait to have more guests on, and then just be able to share experiences, with these games. Like I said, I think 2022 is going to be a really good year for the NLSC and basketball gaming.
We'll definitely be giving it our all, as we always do, because we do love basketball games. As far as the mailbag for the NLC podcast goes, podcast at nba-live.com. Our socials, which we'll be promoting towards the end of the show, or the forum. Just let us know what you'd like us to talk about, any questions, topic suggestions, etc. And of course, we'll be putting out the prompt each and every week as well. But just to wrap up here, Derek, actually I have a question for you.
Oh, go for it. This is spontaneous. I didn't know this was happening.
That's right. That's just the kind of guy I am in 2022. Another resolution, if you will. But what are some games that you'd like us to play this year over Parsec?
Wow. You and me?
Yes. Because we played a lot. We have played many, but there's, we got on the kick of Live 10 and so forth, and Live 06 for a bit there. I know we're looking at doing that season, as we've said before, and maybe we can get into that this year as well. But at some point in over the next few weeks. But what are some other games you like to perhaps revisit? Because we've done many, but we've both got huge collections, so there could be a few more.
No, this is a great question. I'd like for us to revisit like NBA Starting Five, some of those early PlayStation titles, and then talk about them on the show. Titles that weren't like household names, the less popular, less pushed titles that came out in the early 2000s. So I would like to connect with you on those. I'd also like you to experience a little bit more of the original NBA 2K, which you didn't spend much time with, which you and I connected on briefly, but we have a little bit better of a Parsec connection now. And I'd like you to see what made NBA 2K really fun gameplay wise. Same with the original NBA in the Zone. I'd like to connect with you on that, because I just had a fantastic experience the last two games playing with Tecmo Bowl and with Ad B-Ball video games. I'd also like to get into kind of a shared experience on the Street Hoops and One basketball games with you. I'd like to play maybe on the same team with you and see how those games play with us on the same team, because I think it could be a lot of fun. I think those games have really good, really fun gameplay mechanics. And even if we played against each other on those games, I think it's still loose fun. And I think we could generate some really fun highlights on those. Other than that, it wouldn't be far-fetched for us to get strong experiences with you hosting, say, 2K11. So I'd like to play against a head-to-head against you with you hosting games like NBA 2K11 or NBA 2K12, because we haven't done much hosting, not much playing with you hosting on 5-on-5 titles. So I think that would be a lot of fun. And the last thing, maybe, I think it might be a fun experience for us to do some head-to-head with the Xbox One companion app connecting through Parsec on NBA Live 16, NBA Live 15, NBA Live 14, NBA Live 18, and NBA Live 19, just to kind of get the full gamut of NBA Live games from last gen, and for us to kind of experience them in a head-to-head format, which I don't think you were able to do much on those games. So I know that's a lot. That's a big answer, but just the possibilities are really endless.
Oh, no question. I love it. I was actually thinking the same thing. Playing games that I didn't spend as much time with playing head-to-head, and seeing how they hold up in that respect, because it can be very different. If there are problems with the AI, when you have that user versus user, they aren't as much of an issue, and it's just that straight competitive game where you're not dealing with comeback logic from the CPU cheating, basically, and things like that. To that point, now that I've got all of the NBA Live PC games set up and working in Windows 10, we can have different games of those, from obviously the strong run of like Live 2005 and 06, or even 2003 through to 06 on PC, but also some of the earlier ones as well. Like a 98 is always fun to revisit. A 99, we played a game, and 2000 is a classic, obviously. Hey, we can even get some 2001, and we can mod it as well. We can get some of the old mods that are still there in the download section. And actually, to that point, I'd love to play some more games with mods, and maybe showcase some of those mods to the community, and show some of the newer mods, obviously, that what's still being done, but some of the old stuff that had been done back in the day, because those mods are still available, and a lot of great work went into them. So the fact that they're preserved might encourage some other retro gamers to download those and play with those old mods that are still available. So I'd love to do that, and obviously always Live 96 PC with the all-time roster. Once we get that done, that could be some really fun matchups that we can do there. But definitely those Steam games as well, and 2K11, 2K12, that era. No, I'm just looking forward to that. But also maybe some more obscure ones too, and ones that were overlooked, as you said. I really love those ideas.
Yeah, I think it would be great. Before we wrap up the show, what would be maybe a couple games that you would like to host to have me play against you? Games that maybe you weren't able to play head-to-head enough with people at the time.
I mean, honestly, something like a Live 96 PC, maybe even a Jam Tournament Edition PC, because I did play a lot of that co-op with my cousin. Again, I'm very close to my cousin, but we didn't have that many arguments because we were always playing co-op back in the day as well. So that'd be fun to play that game. If we could ever mod TE for PC, that would just be a 11-year-old me's dream come true, quite frankly. But, if we could get 2001 working a little bit better, then, maybe we can polish up those skills head to head and co-op, and finally maybe even connect with Nate and Roger. That'd be cool too.
I was thinking of something like that. How cool would it be if we could get them on Parsec and you and I kind of sharpen our skills? We'd have to sharpen our skills. Those guys are pros.
A lot, yeah.
But sharpen our skills on Live 2001, get reacquainted in it, try to get really good co-op wise, and say, all right, Nate and Roger, let's do it, and go to head with those guys, you and me on the same team versus them two on the same team. I think that would be a lot of fun. So maybe we could do something like that.
Maybe we could even things up and we could all just play Live 2002 instead. That's what I do know.
Yeah, I just want to use the Wizards Jordan if we do, I can pull the miraculous stuff.
But just so many ideas, and we're going to be creating content based on those ideas too. Obviously, some video highlights here and there. On the podcast, we'll be talking about it. I'm sure I'll have my articles and so forth. Something else I want to do this year is I actually had a pretty of success with the Tales from the Virtual Hardwood video I made last year for the Halloween. For Halloween, I did that for the story. I used the audio from my interview with Tim Kitzrow, episode 280 of the NLSC podcast, if you want to go back and listen to that in full. I'd like to do some more just little short videos like that, just sharing some interesting tidbits about basketball gaming over the years. People seem to enjoy that. Minute to a minute and a half videos like that, and other fun things that we'll be doing. Also looking to do some things with adding some more features to the site. We need to make some technical upgrades, but a lot of fun stuff we're planning for 2022.
People, listen, please tune into the NLSC YouTube channel and look through the videos that were uploaded in 2021. I sent Andrew a lot of highlight videos from my sessions with people in Parsec. There's sessions from Andrew and I, highlights from NBA Jam OFE, Super Dunk Shot, etc. There is just a lot of fun content to look at on the NLSC YouTube. Please check it out. Yeah, there's a lot of good highlight videos.
And more to come, obviously. And we have some playlists set up there, as we're meant to do with YouTube, obviously, and including the aforementioned NLSC NBA Live 10 tournament. We've got a whole playlist. Go back and rewatch the whole tournament. I think you'll really enjoy the battles that everybody had.
No, I think that's great that you put that into a playlist. And yeah, the whole playlist is on there. So if you want to watch highlights from every single game that was played in the tournament and see what transpired, you can do that right through the playlist on the NLSC YouTube. So I think that's awesome.
Lots of fun to be had with the Virtual Hardwood in 2022. And of course, we'll be bringing you this podcast every week as well. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of episode number 408 of the NLSC podcast. We thank you for tuning in. The podcast comes out every week on Sundays. In addition to coming out on the NLSC, which is nba-live.com, of course, you can also find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, just to name a few of those podcatching platforms, as well as our YouTube channel, which we just mentioned. Any way you want to listen to the show, we appreciate you tuning in each and every week. And of course, we also invite you to connect with us on social media. So Derek, what are your handles and any other final words this week?
Thanks to our listeners for a great 2021. I thought it was fantastic for basketball gaming.
Agreed.
I think that the community is headed in the right direction as far as really enjoying these games past and present and connecting on the, to share those experiences. And, whether it be modding or gameplay or whatnot, like I said, I think as a community, we're heading in the right direction. Don't forget to send me those top 10 highlights. I love getting them, and we definitely had a lot of participation this past week. I think it came out great. You can connect with me on Twitter at D4Free84 or at D4Free You can connect with me over on the NLSC, D4Free. I'm a team member over there, and tune into my YouTube as well, D4Free. And please tune in to the NLSC YouTube.
Absolutely. Once again, some great content coming this year through YouTube, through our social media, through the articles on the front page, and of course get involved in the discussion in the forum as well. In the forum, I am Andrew. I am Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. On Instagram, we are NLSC Basketball. Once again, our aforementioned YouTube channel is youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, NBA-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.